This is your host Andres, and I welcome you to Where Are You Listening? An exploration of blackness in the songs we love.
Palenquero, orgullo de raza negra que español extranjero. Palenquero en Palenque.
Today, we'll be listening to Palenquero, Palenque Man, by Nelda Piña y sus tambores. Where You Listening is a series of the Mixedtape podcast which aims to center the contribution of Black people and culture across Latin America and its diaspora through dance and music. This episode of the series accompanies the episode Yo me llamo Cumbia, My Name is Cumbia of our second season. Go give it a listen. We interviewed some great cumbia and bullerengue experts. And talking about experts we interviewed, let's go back to today's artist, Nelda Piña. She is one of the most humble persons I have ever had the chance to speak to. And because you should really hear her story from her own voice, I'll let her do her own introduction. Her translated words are presented here in the voice of our host, Melissa.
Bueno, el nombre es Nelda Rosa Piña Quesada.
My name is Nelda Rosa Piña Quesada. I was born in a little town called Gamero on December 16th of 1946 in the state of Bolívar in Colombia. Music has been something that really motivates me. I started doing music in 1987. Since I was a young child, I'd been listening to the sounds of the drums, watching the bullerengue and cumbia ruedas, the circles, that used to visit my town from elsewhere to interpret. And they used to make these big ruedas. However, when I was a child, I never thought that someday I was going to interpret. I did like to dance and move in my own way, but it never occurred to me to interpret. I would just go to the parties and reunions to look. It was only after I was already a little old, in my 40s, that someone insinuated to me, "You have a nice voice. You could start singing traditional music." After all, I do come from singers. Irene Martinez, who was the first person in Gamero to travel and showcase baile cantao, or sung dance, was my mother's aunt. And Irene's mother was a great cantaora. My mom liked baile cantao, but she didn't sing. Maybe that's where the artistic vein comes from. After traveling to Venezuela, I came back to my town, Gamero, in 1985. There was this young man who was Marta Herrera's manager, sister of the great cantaora, Emilia Herrera. I told Marta that I wasn't a composer, but that I had a couple of verses to see if she could make a song out of them. I hummed them, and the young man told me, "Nelda, but you have a nice voice. You could record this yourself." I was surprised. I didn't know how to sing. I had never sung. That's where it all gets started. The young man insisted, and he invited some musicians. He brought them to my place, and I started singing something that I didn't really know, because I had to write it down to be able to sing it. And when I saw that the young man kept insisting, I kept going. I went to Barranquilla to Felito Records, a music label, and I brought 2 songs. He listened to them and said, "Of course, I'm going to record them for you." That energized me and lifted my spirits. It was from there that my career was launched. Economically, music hasn't produced a whole lot to me. However, I've traveled a lot. I've been to Cuba, Uruguay, Argentina, Chile, and I've been with several music groups. Now, I'm with my friend David Mesa, and we have this project, Nelda Piña y sus tambores, which is the one we're hoping does well. My story is long, but I'm telling it to you because I don't like telling lies. I gained nothing from telling you that I was born singing, that I was singing in my mom's womb. That's a lie. I did like the sounds, the rhythms, and would sneak out from my house to dance in secret because my mom was very strict, and she didn't really let me go out, me being a kid. I would just sneak out. I would go dance and move. I would come back home after, like nothing happened. But singing, that I did not do.
There you have it, Nelda by Nelda. Let's transition now to our song of the day, Palenquero. In this song, Nelda pays homage to the town of San Basilio de Palenque, to its music, its cultural influence, and its deep black roots. Although, to be precise, Palenque has black roots, black trunk, black branches, and black beautiful flowers. The whole tree is black is what I'm trying to say. Let's listen.
Palenquero, orgullo de raza negra que español extranjero. Palenquero en Palenque.
Palenque, palenquero, orgullo de raza negra que españoles trajeron. Palenque, Palenque Man, pride of the black race that the Spaniards brought here. San Basilio de Palenque, commonly known as Palenque, is a town in the province of Bolívar, in the northern part of Colombia, declared in 2005 a masterpiece of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity by UNESCO. Palenque is known for many things: its food, its language, its music, its culture. But historically, it is known for the following reasons. First, because it was among the first towns of formerly enslaved black people who escaped their captors in the Americas. These towns are known as Palenques or Quilombos. Second, because it likely is the first and one of the only ones to have ever been recognized officially as free by colonizers in the Americas. In fact, Palenque gained its freedom in the 18th century, almost 100 years before the Colombian independence. Third, because it is likely to be the only one of those Palenques and Quilombos to remain to this day with their culture, traditions, and social organization fairly preserved. The history of Palenque starts in the 16th century with its hero, its spiritual founder, if you will, Bencos Biojó. Bencos was an enslaved African man whose former royal status in Africa seemed to have fueled him to put together a group of enslaved Africans and pursue their freedom. And he was successful at it. So much so that the crown let him and his men walk freely through the streets of Cartagena for several years, until the crown betrayed and killed him. The movement he started, however, did not die with him. The Africans who had freed themselves and their descendants, including some of Bencos' children, continued the fight in the region of Montes de Maria. And after many attempts by the colonial government to reduce all rebel groups of escaped black captives, they failed to defeat this group and eventually decided to grant them official freedom and self-government in 1713, with a treaty known as the Entente Cordiale. The document presented to UNESCO for the candidacy to be declared masterpiece of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity reflects on the early freedom gained by the Palenque people and its interaction with Colombia's abolition laws. I quote, "In that sense, two major laws, such as the Law of Free Wombs in 1821 and the abolition of slavery in 1851, do not have real meaning in the oral memory of Palenque. After all, the town's inhabitants had been free for more than 2 centuries."
Palenquero en Palenque, tú fuiste el primero. Palenquero en Palenque, tú fuiste el primero. Palenquero en Palenque, tú fuiste el primero. De África fue traído.
Palenquero, en Palenque, tú fuiste el primero. Palenque Man, palenquero. In Palenque, you were the first one. Okay, so who would be best to tell us about Palenque than a palenquera herself? For this, we had the honor to talk to Matilde Herrera, an instructor of Colombian folkloric dances with more than 50 years of experience, a trained practitioner of ethnic education, the director and choreographer of Kumbé Dance Company, and a palenquera who has represented Palenque culture in many festivals around the globe and who has received numerous awards for her work. She first tells us about Palenque's founder, Bencos Biojó. Matilde's translated words are presented here in the voice of Stephanie Watkins Cruz, a friend of our podcast.
Palenque fue fundado por Benko Bioho y un grupo de africanos que fueron esclavizados.
Palenque was founded by Benkos Bioho and a group of Africans who were enslaved but who were very brave. Benkos got a group together and they started to do their thing with the drums and other things. That's how it was possible for them to get to what today is Palenque de San Basilio, to Palenque's Plaza. If you go to Palenque, there you can see the statue of Benkos and the church, because that's where they arrived. Benkos Bioho was the son of a king, so he could not conceive to be treated like a slave. Hence, he organized the black people, the Africans, who weren't aware that they were quote unquote black. That word was used by Spaniards to differentiate groups of black people, indigenous people, and Creoles who were children born here in the Americas and who were also children of Palenque women, because Spaniards sure liked Palenqueras and indigenous women. The Palenqueros were able to achieve what they achieved because Bencos was very brave. He was a warrior, and he taught them to be warriors. The Spanish crown, when they realized that the Palenque warriors that Bencos created were giving the Spaniards a run for their money, granted them freedom. However, they told Bencos that he had to stop liberating Africans. But in his head, he had to continue doing it because those were his people. That's why they assassinated him.
You heard how Matilde stressed the bravery of Bencos and the group of Africans that freed themselves and started that successful Palenque movement in Montes de Maria. As a measure of their bravery, let me read you some of the official punishment that black enslaved men would face from escaping were they to be captured. These ordinances are found in the text Documents for the History of Cartagena, put together by José Ureta, cited by Aquiles Escalante. I quote, "For within 15 days absent, 100 lashes will be given to him at the pillory, leaving him tied there for a whole day for the other blacks to see him. For within 1 month absent, his genitals will be cut and put at the pillory for the blacks to take example. For within a year absent, he shall be killed." End quote. Taking that risk for your freedom. Now that is bravery.
De África fue traído como esclavo del español. Pero el negro precavido por las montañas huyó. Palenquero en Palenque. Tú fuiste el primero. Palenquero en Palenque. Tú fuiste el primero. Palenquero en Palenque.
De África fue traído como esclavo del español, pero el negro precavido por las montañas huyó. From Africa he was brought as the slave of the Spaniard, but the savvy, clever black man ran away through the mountains.
Y tenemos como mucha creatividad, pero es por todo lo que se dio durante el proceso de la...
We, Palenqueros and Palenqueras, have a lot of creativity. Everything that happened during the process in which black people coming from Africa were enslaved made us very creative. For instance, Palenque is about 1 hour away from Cartagena. Black people were spread all over in the estates and farms in the Montes de Maria. They were spread in all those towns in the Montes de Maria. But through the sound of the drums, they were able to communicate. That's why there is a drum which is called llamador, which in Spanish means caller. We use this drum in the Barranquilla Carnival. It sounds like this. The llamador is the one that marks the rhythm. With that drum, with that sound, they were able to escape from all those estates and farms in the Montes de Maria. Now, upon arriving to Palenque, they got really happy, and they started creating their own drums there. They realized they could create the drums, and that's why there's also a drum that's called alegre, which means happy. They rejoiced and started jumping with happiness. Besides the sounds of the drums, Black people were able to get to Palenque because they drew maps in their braids. Why did women braid their hair like that? Because women worked harvesting crops and they knew how to go from one farm to the next to harvest. Men didn't know this as much because since they were most likely to get in trouble, they weren't allowed to go out. Women had the clever idea to start braiding like that, like the braids we use, and to use the head wraps. In those braids, they used to put seeds to guarantee their nutrition. For instance, if I want to, I can put money in my head wrap and no one ever knows I have it there. They used to do that. They used to put gold in there. All sorts of things they were able to hide to guarantee their welfare. They were able to get to Palenque also because of those braids.
Esto dice el palenquero, esto dice el palenquero, yo soy de sangre muy pura, de costumbres primitivas no las cambio por ninguna. Palenquero en Palenque, tú fuiste el primero. Palenquero en Palenque, tú fuiste el primero. Palenquero en Palenque, anda. Tú fuiste el primero. Palenquero en Palenque.
Esto dice el palenquero. Yo soy de sangre muy pura. De costumbres primitivas, no las cambio por ninguna. This says the Palenque Man. My blood is very pure, my traditions primitive, and I don't change them for any other. Part of that culture that Palenque people are so proud of is their language. Palenqueros and palenqueras are fluent in both Palenque Language and Spanish. Matilde told us about the beautiful history of the Palenque language.
La lengua palenquera se da por la necesidad que tenían los africanos.
The Palenque language emerged out of the necessity. Palenque people came from various places in Africa. Did you know that in Africa they spoke more than 5,000 languages? I had the opportunity to go to Zambia, and there were 70 tribes, each one with its own way of speaking. Can you imagine the cultural richness that was there? People from several ethnic groups arrived here. For instance, the Bantu, the Kikongos, people from Guinea, and from many other places in Africa, such as the Congo. They had a problem. They didn't want the Spaniards to understand them, but they also didn't understand each other. So something needed to be created, and there was a need to create a language to be able to communicate. And that's when the Palenque language was created. For instance, talking about personal pronouns. I is I. You is Bo. He is Eli. We is Suto. They is Ane. You in plural is Enu. The Palenque language is spoken as though you were singing because we, Palenque people, speak singing. That's why all of us know how to sing, because we speak singing. We may not have a very special voice, but we sing.
Dicen que Benco viajó, dicen que Benco viajó, fue el fundador de ese pueblo y la familia Casiani primera que hubo en los negros. Palenquero en Palenque, ¡ay! Tú fuiste el primero. Palenquero en Palenque. Tú fuiste el primero. Palenquero en Palenque. Tú fuiste el primero. ¡Bótame ese cuero! ¡Ey! ¡Las varitas! ¡Ah, ah, ah, ah! ¡Y!
Dicen que Bencos Biojó fue el fundador de ese pueblo, y la familia Cassiani, primera que hubo en los negros. They say that Bencos Biojó was the founder of this town, and the Cassiani family, the first one among black people. Besides Palenque's founder, Bencos Biojó, Nelda talks here about the Cassiani family, its most illustrious member probably being Maestro Rafael Cassiani Cassiani, founder and lead voice of the group Sexteto Tabalá. I remember in the early 2000s, back in Colombia, when my cousin Alex and I discovered a CD by Sexteto Tabalá. Rayas del Son Palenquero is called. To this day, I listen to this album because it's a gem. Check it out, you can definitely stream it on Spotify. And luckily for us, Matilde had the opportunity to work closely with Rafael during her long artistic career.
Rafael Cassiani tuvo la fortuna de ser niño cuando empezó.
Rafael Cassiani had the fortune to be a kid at the time when musical groups called sextetos started sounding. The sextetos started sounding because in 1930, palenqueros were working in sugar mills with Cubans, who would sing their Cuban song in their free time. The palenqueros started to listen to them and said to themselves, look, we can also sing in their language. We're not going to let them get the upper hand. So they started building homemade instruments with the help of a Cuban who explained some things to them. Rafael was a little kid, but his uncle would bring him around. Over time, all those people who started it passed away, and Rafael was the one who kept the knowledge. He started composing songs, and he started looking for people. From there emerged what you know as the Sexteto Tabalá. Even today, he has a group of children and youngsters who play sexteto. Nowadays, there are many sextetos in Palenque, which is great. However, the group that always accompanies me to wherever I go is the Sexteto Tabalá. If I go to Europe, they go. Wherever I go, they go. I love their music. As it pertains to sextetos, instruments that are used include the timba and pechiche drums, the marimbula, the claves, the guacharaca, the guiro or scraper, and the maracas. Also, the singer, the choir, and the clapping. There were 6 instruments, and that's why it's called sexteto. But they added the Palenque language and started using it in farewells for the dead, because for them, that is very important. In Palenque, there are 3 worlds: the world of the living, the world of the dead, and the world of the water, which is where the Moana lives. For instance, there's a song to say farewell to the dead in which they use the words adiós, which means goodbye, and cha, which means ma'am in Palenque language, although it truly means an important ma'am because they don't say cha to everybody. The song goes like this.
Adiós, chachingo al amanecer, son del amanecer, adiós, chacuche al amanecer, son del amanecer, son del amanecer, ¡epa! Son del amanecer.
You can see where the interjection epa came from. This interjection is used by cumbiamberos and other carnival goers in the Barranquilla Carnival. They say huepa. That's where epa came from. That's why when I go to the carnival, I always say, you have got to help the Palenque people because the carnival is what it is because they did this thing and that thing. They contributed this and that. I explain to them. I'm very proud of the Sexteto Tabalá. That's why I go everywhere with them. Rafael Cassiani was born in Palenque, and he always looked out for the sextetos. That's why he became such a professional in that field, and he helped many young people so that today we could have the number of sextetos that we have in Palenque.
Palenquero en Palenque. Tú fuiste el primero. Se acabó nuestro campeón. Se acabó nuestro campeón. Antonio Quituambelé. Palenquero en Palenque. Tú fuiste el primero. Palenquero en Palenque. Tú fuiste el primero. Palenquero en Palenque.
Se acabó nuestro campeón, Antonio Kid Pambelé, pero este bello folclore no hay que dejarlo caer. Our champion is gone, Antonio Kid Pambelé, but this beautiful folklore, we cannot let it die. Antonio Cervantes, known as Kid Pambelé, was a Palenquero boxing champion who held the light welterweight title for most of the 70s decade. His triumphs made Pambelé a folk hero in Colombia. But where did Pambelé's skills came from?
Resulta que en Palenque, te voy a contar, en la parte social, estamos...
Let me tell you something. In Palenque, in social terms, we are organized in cuadros with a K, which is not the same as cuadro with a C, which refers to an ornamental object. Nowadays, you have cuadros, you have elders committees, you have organizations of black communities, and for instance, the women also organize. We organize ourselves to get done anything that the town might need. Pambelé came from one of those cuadros. In those cuadros, there was the neighborhood uptown and the neighborhood downtown, and they would organize fights against each other. There was a day in which they would fight physically, but it's all part of a game. That's where Pambelé came from. That's why he was so good. Young people in Palenque, men and women alike, know how to defend themselves without having studied personal defense, because there was a day used for boxing, and another day used to carry water, gallons of water. The cuadros would organize that. They would play, and the winner would be the one who didn't spill the water. They had to run with the containers on their heads, and the one who didn't spill water would win. Those things gave Pambelé skills. When he came out, it was a boom. I remember that my dad was working for a factory. I was living in a neighborhood where nobody had a TV, and they gave my dad a TV. Everybody would meet at our house. It was a whole party. My mom used to make sugarcane beverages called agua de panela to give to people. Palenque women were all so very proud of Pambelé.
Por valiente se liberaron los negros. Aquí estamos en la orilla del canal del dique. Uy. Palenquero es Palenque.
Por valientes se liberaron los negros. Aquí estamos en la orilla del canal del dique. Black people freed themselves with their bravery. Here we are at the banks of the Dique Canal. The Canal del Dique is a canal in the northern part of Colombia that connects the Cartagena Bay with the Magdalena River, the main river of the country. Canal del Dique is also the name given to the region that surrounds the canal, which contains Gamero, the town Nelda is from, as well as San Basilio de Palenque, which is only about 25 minutes away by car. In this region, many black men and women freed themselves from slavery and founded palenques. All of those palenques, with the exception of San Basilio, were ultimately conquered back by the colonial government.
Palenquero es Palenque. Tú fuiste el primero. Primer pueblo libre. En la costa caribe estamos todos los afrodescendientes.
Primer pueblo libre en la costa caribe. Estamos todos los afrodescendientes. First free town in the Caribbean coast. Here we are, all the afrodescendants. And before we said goodbye to our Palenquera expert, we asked her about the legacy that Palenque has given to Colombian culture.
El legado que nosotros le aportamos a Colombia.
The legacy that we contribute to Colombia and to the Barranquilla Carnival, first is the drums. All those drums, the llamador y alegre, the pechiche, all those drums that were created there. That's one thing. There's also the music, the way in which they started to compose music. For instance, the bullerengue. Bullerengue has spread all over the country. You find it in the Antioquia state. You find it in Barranquilla, where they have a bullerengue festival, and where they also have the Day of Tradition, in which they sing bullerengue. So that's another part of the legacy. And there's also our worldview. The legacy that we contribute there is that we see the world in a different way. We don't see it to get rich or to offend or harm people in order to get money. That's not us. We value the world, the earth, very much. It's very important, as it is also very important for the natives who speak a lot about Mother Earth. We also see the earth as something very important. Case in point, they were going to pave the streets in the town, and the elders didn't let it happen. The elders said, "Why don't you cover yourself with that and see how you feel?" And in the end, they couldn't pave the streets in the town because the elders didn't allow it. And who are the ones who rule there? The elders. We value our elders very much.
¡Ey! ¡Las varitas! ¡Ah, ah, ah, ah! ¡Y!
So what would be best than to finish this episode having Nelda herself reflecting on the song she wrote? Well, you bet I thought about that when we interviewed her for the Cumbia episode of our second season. First, I asked her what her vision was regarding her latest album, Eco de mis Ancestros, in which today's song, Palenquero, appears.
Este último álbum que lanzamos
I created this last album we launched with the purpose of spreading the music, for people to listen to these rhythms. Think about the album's name, Ecos de mis Ancestros, echoes of my ancestors. That is what is left from the ancestors. Memories, stories about son de negro, about bullerengue, about black fruits, just like the song Palenquero in that album. The album was a project with some friends, including David Mesa, Franklin Tejedor, one of David's friends who came from Switzerland, and others. Since we didn't have the resources to record in a studio, we recorded in the backyard of my house, out in the open. We recorded the 6 songs of the album in my backyard. And since we wanted to reach as many people as possible, David helped us to get the album in platforms so that people abroad could listen to it. And who knows, maybe it'll get us economic support to record in studio, because at the moment, we don't have the resources to make it happen. I created the album Ecos de mis Ancestros with those intentions, because that's what remains from the ancestors who are no longer with us. The elders who used to interpret the music have passed away. You know, eventually God calls everyone. That's why I titled the album Echoes of My Ancestors, because of the various rhythms in it, including son de negro, bullerengue, and chalupa. My objective was to project the music so that people worldwide could listen to some of what remains from the black roots of the Colombian Caribbean coast.
And of course, I asked her to tell us a little bit about today's song, Palenquero. In particular, I asked her whether the song was a cumbia or a bullerengue, because I couldn't really tell at the beginning. And it turns out I was justified in my confusion.
There's a blend of bullerengue and cumbia in the song because there's a little gaita in there. It's not pure bullerengue because it has that gaita sound. The song itself speaks about the town of Palenque, how it was founded, and about its founder, Bencos Piojo.
Palenque, Palenquero, orgullo de raza negra que españoles trajeron.
Those lyrics refer to the fact that Spaniards were the ones who brought enslaved Africans here. I actually composed this song years ago, and I decided to include it in this album precisely because I wanted more people to know the music, to honor my traditions and my Black roots. It's a tribute to Palenque, to the Black race I belong to.
Since Nelda started singing in the middle of the interview, I pushed a little and asked her if she could sing a little more for us. She agreed, of course, because she's so nice, and gifted us with her voice.
Palenque. Hacen los tambores. Palenquero. Orgullo de raza negra que españoles trajeron. Palenquero en Palenque, tú fuiste el primero. De África fue traído como esclavo del español. Pero el negro precavido por las montañas huyó. Palenquero en Palenque, tú fuiste el primero. Esto dice el palenquero, yo soy de sangre muy pura, de costumbres primitivas, no las cambió por ninguna.
Palenque people are always Black. They do not change their roots, their traditions, nothing.
Dicen que Benco Biojó fue el fundador de ese pueblo y la familia Cassiani, primera que hubo en los negros. Palenquero en Palenque, tú fuiste el primero. Como le digo, yo soy empírica. Yo no estudié las historias.
I'm an empiricist. I didn't go to music school. The stories I tell, I know them because I've heard them. It's not the same when you are a kid and study. Of course, I have some knowledge, but it's not the same as though I'd gone to school. So, I base the song Palenquero in the history of Palenque. I create all my songs the same way. The few songs I've composed are based on stories, things that have happened. I don't know how to invent things. I can only rely on what I've lived, what I feel. How I would love for us to be able to meet one day.
You saw it for yourselves. What a lovely, humble, beautiful soul. If you want to support Nelda Piña y sus tambores, make sure to play her album on Spotify and go to their IG profile, Nelda Piña y sus tambores, to donate at the link in their bio. We'll put a link to their bio in the caption of this episode. And before I let you go, thank you so much to Nelda and to Matilde for helping me in the construction of this episode. You were so kind and so wonderful to talk to. I really hope we meet next time when I visit Colombia. And I cannot stress how much I really love the fact that both of you, Nelda, the singer of the song, but also Matilde, the Palenquera expert, explaining us, introducing us to Palenque culture, decided freely to sing for us in the middle of the interviews. And finally, thank you so much to Stephanie Watkins Cruz for helping us reading Matilde's words in English. And to our listeners, thank you so much for being here with me today. I'm your host, Andres Hincapié, and if you weren't listening, now you are.
El palenquero en Palenque, tú fuiste el primero. Palenquero en Palenque, tú fuiste el primero. Palenquero en Palenque.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. To hear today's song or other songs featured on our Were You Listening series, check out the Were You Listening playlist, which can be found at our website, tarheels.live/mixtape podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at mixtape.podcast, as well as Twitter and YouTube, which are easily accessed through our website. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for our posts. Thanks for listening. This is Mixtape.
Tú fuiste el primero, primer pueblo libre. En la costa caribe estamos todos los afrodescendientes.